Story 1. This is a warning to anyone who thinks browsing the dark web is just a harmless thrill. My name is Julian, and back in 2022, I was a 21-year-old computer science student living alone in a small apartment in Austin, Texas. Being a tech-savvy guy, I had always been curious about the layers of the internet that standard search engines couldn't reach. I understood the risks, or at least I thought I did. I knew about the scams, the illegal marketplaces, and the malware. But I falsely believed that as long as I used a secure virtual private network, masked my IP address, and used the Tor browser, I was completely invisible and safe. I was dead wrong. It was a Tuesday night, around 2 in the morning, and the apartment complex was dead silent. I had just finished my midterms and had a lot of nervous energy, so I decided to do some aimless exploring on the deep web. I was clicking through old directory links, navigating past broken pages and sketchy forums. Most of it was incredibly boring. Just broken code, dead forums about conspiracy theories, and outdated black markets. But after an hour of digging, I stumbled upon an unindexed link on an old text board. The title of the website was simply written as The Watcher's Mirror. Curiosity got the better of me, so I clicked it. The page took an unusually long time to load. When it finally opened, the screen was almost entirely black, except for a crude, low-resolution live video stream in the center. The video showed a dimly lit room with concrete walls. There was a single wooden chair in the middle of the frame, empty. At first, I thought it was a loop or a fake setup designed to scare people. But then, I noticed a digital clock on the wall in the video. The time on the clock matched my local time perfectly. It was a live feed. I stared at the screen, trying to figure out what I was looking at. Suddenly, a text chat box popped up on the right side of the video stream. A username consisting of random numbers typed. "Welcome, user 492. We see you like to watch." I felt a sudden bump in my heart rate. I didn't type anything back. I just sat there frozen. A few seconds later, the anonymous user typed another message. This time, it said, "You shouldn't look into the mirror if you don't want to see yourself." I shook my head, trying to convince myself that it was just an automated bot programmed to say creepy things to anyone who visited the site. I was about to move my mouse to close the tab when the chat box refreshed again. The next message read, "Julian, the blue sweater looks comfortable on you, but you should really lock your balcony door." A wave of absolute freezing terror washed over me. My breath completely caught in my throat. I was wearing a blue college sweater, and my apartment was on the second floor, with a sliding glass door that led out to a small balcony. My hands began to shake violently. How could they possibly know my name? How could they see what I was wearing? I didn't have a webcam connected to my desktop computer. It was completely impossible. Panicking, I reached forward and pulled the power cord straight out of the back of my computer tower. The monitors instantly went black, plunging my living room into a dark, suffocating silence. I sat in my chair, listening closely, my heart beating so loudly I could hear it in my ears. The silence was broken by a soft, distinct scraping sound coming from the outside. It was the unmistakable sound of someone slowly sliding my balcony door open. I had forgotten to lock it after coming inside earlier that evening. I stood up so fast my chair tipped over and crashed onto the floor. I didn't look back. I sprinted into my bedroom, slammed the door shut, and turned the lock. I threw my weight against the door, pressing my back into the wood, crying silently in the dark. A few moments later, I heard heavy, slow footsteps walking across the hardwood floor of my living room. They walked up to my bedroom door and stopped. I held my breath, terrified that they would try to force the door open. Instead, there was just a long, agonizing silence. Then I heard the footsteps walk away, followed by the sound of the balcony door closing. I stayed against that door for 5 hours until the sun came up. When I finally gathered the courage to walk out, my apartment looked exactly the same, except for one thing. Sitting on my kitchen counter was a small, printed photograph. It was a picture of me, taken from the balcony window while I was sitting at my computer, just minutes before the power cord was pulled. The police investigated, but the hacker had left no physical evidence and used highly advanced routing to mask their digital footprint. I moved out the very next week, and I have never touched the deep web since. Story 2. This next story was sent in by a viewer who wishes to remain anonymous. It takes place in a quiet, rural town in Oregon during the winter of 2023. I was working as a freelance digital artist, which meant I kept a terrible sleep schedule. I lived in a secluded house surrounded by dense woods, with the nearest neighbor being almost a mile down the road. Because of the isolation, I spent most of my nights online, looking for unique references, strange forms, and inspiration for my dark surrealist art. This curiosity eventually led me to explore the hidden networks of the dark web using a specialized browser. One night, around 3 in the morning, a heavy snowstorm was raging outside. The wind was howling through the trees, making the old wooden frame of my house creak. I was browsing a hidden wiki page when I found a link titled Custom Order Art Supplies. Being an artist, I clicked it out of pure habit. The website was primitive, consisting of a simple gray background with a list of bizarre items for sale. They weren't selling paint or brushes. They were selling personal belongings, old journals, used shoes, family photo albums, and keys. It looked like a marketplace for stolen items. As I scrolled down the page, my eyes locked onto a listing that made my blood run cold. The item title read, Artist Sketchbook from Oregon, Woods. Below it was a preview image of the item. It was a black, leather-bound sketchbook with a silver skull sticker on the front corner. It was my sketchbook, the exact one that I kept on my studio desk downstairs. I stared at the screen in complete disbelief, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. I stood up from my desk, grabbed a flashlight, and walked downstairs to my studio room. My house was freezing, and the flashlight beam cut through the darkness as I reached the desk. I looked down. The desk was empty. My sketchbook was gone. I felt a sudden rush of adrenaline. Someone had been inside my house while I was upstairs. I ran back upstairs to my computer, my breath coming in short gasps. I refreshed the web page. The listing had been updated. Now, there was a text description beneath the image of my sketchbook. It said, Seller note. The owner is currently sitting in his bedroom on the 2nd floor. He is looking at this web page right now. Bidding starts at $100. A cold sweat broke out across my entire body. They were in the house with me, right now. I realized with horror that the intruder must be watching me from somewhere. Inside the dark rooms, I turned around to face my bedroom door, keeping my flashlight raised like a weapon. The house was completely dark, and the only sound was the howling wind outside. Suddenly, I heard a creak on the floorboards directly outside my bedroom door. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the heavy metal desk lamp next to my monitor, lunged toward the bedroom door, and slammed it shut, locking it instantly. A second later, something heavy threw itself against the door from the outside. The wooden frame groaned under the pressure. Someone was trying to kick the door down. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I have a gun. I am calling the police. The slamming stopped. I heard frantic, heavy footsteps running down the stairs, followed by the loud crash of my back kitchen door being forced open. I dialed 911 immediately, crying into the phone as I told the operator my address. Because of the snowstorm, it took the sheriff's deputies nearly 25 minutes to arrive. When they searched the property, they found that the intruder had entered through a basement window that I had left unlocked. In the kitchen, the back door was wide open, with a trail of footprints leading out into the deep snow of the woods. The police followed the tracks for half a mile until they reached a dirt road, where the footprints disappeared next to tire tracks. The intruder had escaped. They found my sketchbook sitting on the kitchen table, completely ruined. Every single page had been torn out and slashed with a knife. To this day, the police have no leads, and I never sleep without checking every single lock in the house 3 times. Story 3. Our final story happened to a guy named Ethan during his freshman year at a university in Ohio. Ethan was an avid gamer and often stayed up until the early hours of the morning, playing online multiplayer games with his friends. One night, his friends went to sleep early, leaving Ethan alone in his dorm room. Around 1:30 in the morning, not wanting to go to bed yet, he decided to browse an online chat room on the deep web that a guy from his computer science class had told him about. It was an anonymous chat room where people shared weird links and urban legends. Ethan joined the room using a fake handle. The chat was moving fast, with users typing text in various languages. Ethan mostly just watched the scroll, occasionally clicking on links to strange images or old text documents. After a while, a user named Red Clove sent Ethan a private message. The message contained a single URL, and the text, "You look like you're bored. Check this out. It's a game." Ethan, thinking it was just a browser-based horror game or an alternate reality puzzle, clicked the link. The page loaded a simple interface with a text box that read, "Enter your current location to begin the game." Ethan laughed, thinking it was a typical jump scare site trying to use his public IP address to guess his city. He decided to play along, but instead of typing his actual address, he typed the name of a random grocery store down the street from his campus. The website loaded a loading wheel for a few seconds. Then, a new text message appeared on the screen. "Incorrect input. That is a grocery store. You are currently sitting in room 304 of the auxiliary dorm building. Look out your window." Ethan's jaw dropped. His heart began to race. He was indeed in room 304 of the auxiliary dorm building. He slowly turned his head to look at the large glass window that faced the campus quad. It was a foggy, dark night, and the campus courtyard was completely empty under the dim orange glow of the streetlights, except for one spot. Standing directly underneath a tree right outside his building was a person. They were wearing a dark hoodie and holding a bright smartphone, staring straight up at Ethan's third-floor window. As Ethan watched in horror, the person raised their phone and seemed to type something. A second later, Ethan's computer screen beeped with a new message from the website. "See, I told you it was a game. Now, let's see how fast you can run." Before Ethan could even process the message, the fire alarm in his dorm building began to blare with a deafening screech. Demand affected loud piercing fire alarm sirens. Strobe lights began flashing in the hallway outside his room. In a panic, Ethan grabbed his phone and ran out into the corridor, joining dozens of other confused students who were waking up and running down the stairwells to evacuate the building. The crowd poured out into the cold night air of the courtyard. It was complete chaos, with hundreds of students standing around in their pajamas, complaining about the false alarm. Ethan tried to look for the person in the dark hoodie, but there were too many people around. He felt a sudden vibration in his hand. He looked down at his phone. He had received an email from an unknown sender. He opened it. It was a live streaming video link. He clicked it. The video on his phone screen showed a first-person perspective of someone walking through a doorway. Ethan recognized the door instantly. It was his own dorm room door, which he had left unlocked in his panic to escape the fire alarm. The camera panned around his room, showing his unmade bed, his gaming setup, and his computer monitor, which still displayed the deep web chat room. The person holding the camera walked up to Ethan's desk, picked up a small pocket knife that Ethan used to open packages, and held it up to the camera lens. Then the video feed cut to black. A text message appeared on Ethan's phone screen right after. Game over. Thanks for playing. Ethan ran straight to the campus security officers, who were standing by the building entrance. The police rushed up to room 304, but the intruder was already gone. They found that the fire alarm had been manually pulled on the first floor by someone matching the description of the person in the dark hoodie. Inside Ethan's room, nothing was stolen, but his pocket knife was found stabbed deeply into the center of his mattress. The person was never caught, and Ethan transferred to a different university the following semester. He never went back to the deep web again.